Things got seriously heated behind the scenes at Denver Broncos practice, and we need to talk about what happened because this was about much more than just a fight. We know how important it is to protect Bo Nix, and nobody wants to see QB1 taking unnecessary hits in practice. But man, there is something different about the energy of this Broncos team right now. Bo got angry after Nick Bonitto and Malcolm Roach collapsed the pocket and got to him, and what happened next showed us a level of fire that we haven't often seen during the Sean Payton era. And I have to admit, I want to see the Broncos reach the Super Bowl. That's the dream. So why not believe this team can make some noise? Some fans will love seeing this kind of intensity because they believe Denver is developing the toughness needed for the season. Others will say the defense needs to stay away from Bo Nix at all costs. I want to know which side you're on. Do you love seeing Bo react with this much fire? Or do you think the Broncos need to protect him better during practice? Write your opinion below. And if you've been a Denver Broncos fan for more than 15 years, hit that like button hard. All right, let's talk about what happened at Broncos practice, because the fight was only the beginning of the story. Now, we have to start with what happened at practice, because the intensity was impossible to ignore. There was a fight, and while fights at football practice are not exactly unusual, this one seemed to show the kind of edge this Broncos team is developing. The important thing here is not celebrating players taking unnecessary shots at teammates. Nobody wants to see Bo Nix or any other quarterback getting hurt in practice. Quarterbacks wear a different colored jersey for a reason. They're supposed to be protected. But football is also a physical game, and sometimes plays develop in a way where contact becomes difficult to avoid. According to the information from practice, one of the first scrums involved Justin Stranad. Then, a couple of plays later, things became even more heated when Bo Nix got involved. Nick Bonitto and Malcolm Roach collapsed the pocket and ended up getting to Nix. Bo got up angry, threw the football, and another scrum started. And this is where the situation becomes interesting. This was described as possibly the most heated we have seen Bo Nix, or really this Broncos team, during the Sean Payton era. Again, nobody wants the starting quarterback taking unnecessary punishment. That's not the point. The interesting part is the reaction and the competitive mentality behind it. Bo didn't sound like somebody who wanted practice to become easier. He loved the intensity. Nix said, "I love it. I love football. It is football. It's getting me ready for the games coming up." That tells you quite a bit about the mindset of the quarterback. He understands that football is physical. He understands what's coming when the real games begin. And instead of backing away from the challenge, he's embracing that competitive environment. There's an edge developing here. Last year's Broncos team had toughness. This isn't about saying they didn't. But this year's group seems to be practicing like a team that believes it still has something to prove. They don't want anyone thinking what they accomplished was some kind of accident or fluke. The feeling coming from this practice is that these players want to prove this team really is that good. And after the emotions settled down, the defense gave us even more reasons to pay attention. Let's begin with Jody Barron, because defensive coordinator Vance Joseph gave us a very interesting piece of information about how Denver is using him. Barron already showed his versatility, but Joseph explained just how many different responsibilities the Broncos can give him. Joseph said Barron plays multiple spots, and that his versatility is going to be valuable. He's working at nickel. He's working in dime packages. And most interestingly, Joseph said Barron sometimes plays safety. That last part deserves attention. Earlier in training camp, Sean Payton had been very clear when discussing Barron and safety reps, but now Joseph has confirmed that Barron does play safety for Denver. That doesn't necessarily mean the Broncos are suddenly changing Barron's primary position. It sounds much more like Denver sees him as an emergency option there when needed. But even that could be extremely valuable because of the current safety situation. Talanoa Hufanga and Brandon Jones are obviously important pieces at the position. J.L. Skinner played well against the Atlanta Falcons. Devin Key has tremendous value on special teams, where he has been an All-Pro. Denver kept 4 safeties last season, so the roster numbers become interesting. Imagine a group consisting of Hufanga, Jones, Skinner, and Key. What happens if Denver suddenly needs another coverage option at safety? That's where Barron's versatility becomes extremely useful. Instead of being limited to one position, Barron potentially gives Vance Joseph another solution. He can play nickel, dime, corner if necessary, and now we know he can also provide something at safety. That kind of versatility can become extremely valuable during a long NFL season. And Barron isn't simply getting attention because of what he might be able to do. He performed well against Atlanta. His overall PFF grade from that game was 65.4. His coverage grade was 63.0, and his tackling grade was 77.8. His physical style has always been an important part of his game. He can close on plays and tackle, which makes the possibility of using him occasionally at safety even more interesting. The next question is whether we'll actually see it.
With the Broncos facing Green Bay, even 2 or 3 snaps at safety would be interesting to watch. It doesn't need to become his main responsibility. Nobody is saying Denver should move him there permanently. But if Vance Joseph is telling us that Barron can play safety, seeing how he handles a few live reps would give us a better idea of what Denver might have available during the season. But Barron isn't the only young defender giving Broncos fans something to think about. Let's talk about Lavelle Bailey-Red Murdoch. Murdoch was one of the rookies who stood out against Atlanta, and the more you look at what he did, the more interesting his situation becomes. One of the biggest details was that Murdoch was calling plays for the defense. He had the green, meaning Vance Joseph trusted him with communication responsibilities on the field, and Joseph said the rookie did a great job calling those plays. For a young linebacker trying to establish himself, that's significant. It isn't only about running fast or making one highlight tackle. A linebacker responsible for communication needs to understand what is happening around him. He has to process information and help organize the defense. Murdoch was given that responsibility and responded well. Then you look at his physical performance. Murdoch has a wide, powerful frame, and his closing speed looked better than expected. He doesn't necessarily need to win because he's the most spectacular athlete on the field. He can win with angles, awareness, and physicality. And there is one particular habit in his game that Broncos fans should watch closely. He attacks the football. When Murdoch arrives at the ball carrier, he isn't satisfied with simply making contact. He is looking for opportunities to knock the football loose. Against Atlanta, there was a play where the ball was caught in the flat. Murdoch closed the distance quickly, arrived at the ball carrier, and used his right arm to punch at the football while finishing the tackle. It didn't become a fumble, but the mentality was obvious. He wants the football. Murdoch finished the game with 8 tackles, 7 of them solo. He received an 81.5 tackling grade and a 69.4 overall PFF grade. But here's the number that really stands out. 0 missed tackles. When Murdoch made contact against Atlanta, the ball carrier went down. That's the kind of basic football skill that sometimes gets lost when everybody becomes focused on speed, athletic testing, and highlight plays. A linebacker still has to tackle. He still has to meet runners in space, take the correct angle, and finish the play. Murdoch did that. And while the rookie is making his case, the veteran ahead of him wasn't about to disappear. Alex Singleton had a big practice. Singleton intercepted Bo Nix, which was especially encouraging because it showed that his ability in pass coverage can still produce plays. During 9-on-7 work, he also recorded a tackle for loss.